Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. This week I'm continuing doing some of my own hobby as I've been updating my original Space Marine chapter, the Void Walkers. In last week's video I painted up a couple of aggressors, but since then I've further refined the scheme and added even more heraldry. In this case I've done some heavy intercessors and I updated one of my old captains, and that got me thinking. Is it such a crime to repaint old models? Is it a waste of time? Well, I don't think so, and this week I'm going to paint one of my old dreadnoughts, and this is another information dump, stuff that was going on in my brain whilst I was painting. So whilst I will be painting in the background, it's not the main focus of the video, it's just something to watch while we wax lyrical about painting old minis and painting in general. So hopefully this will inspire a little bit of discussion or thought, and as always, I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments, so do let me know. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of what I actually want to talk about today, I want to give a little bit of a brief on who this dreadnought is. This is Brother Ventikaris, and he was the second dreadnought I picked up after returning to the hobby in 2017-2018. Now, being the second, obviously I'd built and painted one dreadnought before this guy, but that one wasn't particularly interesting. I didn't pose it very well, and this one was the first time I actually went into doing a little bit more posing. It's still very simple, you know, weapon arm forward, other arm back, and walking, but compared to everything else I'd done at the time, this was my first go at actually trying to manipulate the kit into something I had a vision of. So, in terms of my hobby journey, he's fairly important. Now, as you can see, the paint job is nothing special. I'm pleased with the writing that was on the front that says his name that I pointed out earlier, but other than that, it's dry brushing and my first real go with Nuln Oil, so it wasn't an amazing job by any means, but still better than earlier attempts. The main reason I decided to repaint this guy is actually probably the main reason I'd ever recommend repainting any of your old models, and that's to give some love to those models that have been sat doing nothing for a long time. This guy's been sat on a shelf for about 2 or 3 years without really being used, and yes, that's my fault for not using the army as much as I used to, but at the same time, I had no drive to use the army. It was an old paint job and I wasn't really too pleased with it, especially when compared with newer models I've painted. As it is, by the time this guy's been repainted, I'm actually really excited to use him again. And it's nothing to do with rules or where the game's at, it's because I painted something and I think it looks decent, and I'm proud of it. And that's a good reason to want to use your models, so if by going back and repainting your old models you decide, you know what, I want to use this old guy I haven't used in ages, then that's great. That might seem a little bit sentimental when I'm talking about a toy soldier, essentially, but if you put time and effort into something, you generally get a bit of an emotional attachment to it. And whilst I was painting him, I was reminiscing about the times I'd used him on the tabletop, and the little stories that had come out of his actions and what he'd achieved. And essentially, he'd created his own character through rolling dice. Now that might not be that important to you, and it might sound a little bit silly to some people, and that's fair enough, but as humans, we're very emotional creatures, and for some reason, we develop emotional attachments to inanimate objects. I mean, we develop attachments to things on film and television, and they're not necessarily real either. So, yeah. Anyway, another good reason to repaint your old models is purely for the fact that it's good practice. In this hobby, practice isn't really something we necessarily think about. Firstly, every model kit is a large time investment, and if you're anything like me, you want to get it from the box onto the table, or into a display cabinet, depending on what you're painting, as quickly and efficiently as possible. I personally really enjoy the painting process, so I don't need that to be too quick, but at the same time, the end result is what I'm going for. Of course, I enjoy the journey, but I'm not really thinking about practicing while I'm doing it. This is where old models can come in if you want them to. If you decide you want to try a particular technique, but you don't really want to do it on the brand new shiny model you've just picked up, or perhaps a model you've just been gifted by a friend, then an old model that hasn't seen the light of day or been used in a long time could be perfect. I'm not advocating repainting all of your old models because, as mentioned in a previous video, seeing the progression from when you started to where you are now is an excellent reminder of how far you've come. However, there might be a couple of old models, say you batch painted a load right at the start when you joined the hobby, and as a result you really don't like many of them. then it's okay to take a single model or a squad or something like this dreadnought here and there and repaint it. It's a really easy way to practice, and the best part is it doesn't really cost you anything. That brings me on to my third point, and that's that it's a really cheap way of continuing to do your hobby. Now, obviously, this is not going to apply to everybody. I know people like my mate Monkey, this is their worst nightmare, having to repaint a model they've already painted. But if you're anything like me and you really enjoyed the painting aspect of the hobby, then this is a way to get some almost essentially free hobby time. Again, aside from the paints that you're using, the model is already there. You don't have to buy it again to repaint it. I've heard of and know of people, especially when they were kids, who were consistently repainting models because they didn't have the funds, kids rarely do, to keep buying new Games Workshop models. So they'd repaint their old ones. Now, this is definitely not going to appeal to everybody, but for me, once in a while, it's a good thing. Speaking of good things, this hobby gives us a really nice sense of achievement when we've completed something, and that leads me on to my next point. If you've been watching what's going on the screen, you've noticed that I haven't stripped this dreadnought back to bare plastic, and I haven't resprayed it entirely. I'm actually just adding a few layers to update his scheme to bring him in line with the new heraldry that I've come up with for the Voidwalkers. I'm not going to classify this as completely repainting a model, but it's just adding some stuff, making some changes that bring it in line with your current paint style, or just finish up what you never actually finished. So in this case, I'm going to get onto some edge highlighting in a bit, and that's going to make the model pop like it never has before. Because back when I painted it, I didn't have the confidence or the brush control to try edge highlighting. The process overall is actually going to be really quick because I'm not building the model, I'm not having to prime it or put all the base coats down again, apart from those where I'm changing the colours up slightly. This means I'm going to get that warm fuzzy sense of achievement despite not having to put tons and tons of time into this, so that's a win. After all, as humans, we're always chasing the sense of achievement, that dopamine hit from completing something, and as hobbyists, we love seeing new shiny things in our cabinets and on our table, and despite this being an old model, it's going to feel new and shiny to me. This is a really great technique if you're struggling with painting something new, or you're halfway through a project and you just can't seem to find the willpower or have the steam to complete it. And that's fine, that's a very normal part of hobbying. A way around it is to do something like this. Take an old model that's either half done or fully complete, but you know you can do better, and just add a little bit to it. Tidy up a few blends, add some highlights here and there, maybe change up a knee pad or something. You don't have to go as far as I am on this dreadnought, but when you're done, you'll feel like you've achieved something, and it's a really good way to get back into the swing of things. I view this as the same as completing an easy character. So you're trying to do a 10-man squad and you're struggling, so you take a break and you go and do a single character instead, from start to finish, and you get the sense of achievement and you're ready to go back to that squad or even something else and try again. This is just easier because you're not painting an entire model, you're painting half of one. In the case of what you're seeing on the screen, quite literally half of a model. The final reason of the 5 that I've built in the title is really simple and might seem like a bit of a cop-out, but it's just that it's fun. It's enjoyable to go back and paint something. I mentioned right at the start that whilst I was painting this guy, I was remembering all his tabletop achievements and the backstory that I'd created back when I was first getting into the hobby and I was absolutely mad for the lore. And I found that really enjoyable, and now, as mentioned, I'm looking forward to getting this guy on the tabletop and adding to his story. It's minor, but for someone who plays a lot of narratively based games, it's important to me. Important might not be the right word, there's food, water, doing my day job, stuff like that, but in terms of my tabletop gaming hobby and the stories that these miniatures are telling, it's important to me that I want to add to this guy's story. And really, we've got to think about why we're in this hobby. It's probably not to make content. I mean, I make content because I enjoy it, but that's only because I enjoy it. Likewise, I'm in the hobby because I enjoy it. I find it fun. So repainting models, if it's your jam, can be fun. Yeah, I just unironically said, if it's your jam. So I'm in the Winters SEO Discord, which is a great place. You should definitely go check it out. I'll link his channel in the description. But someone used the term dummy thick to describe a Hecaton land fortress the other day. And I unapologetically got mad. Like, I think I'm getting old. Like, I didn't say anything, but it like genuinely ruined my day. And I don't know why. I'm sorry. Anyway, that random sidebar aside, we'll finish up this video. I've been really enjoying painting this Dreadnought, and I do need to re-attack the base, but as it stands, he now fits in with the new and improved Voidwalkers, and also his plasma looks a lot better. Anyway, as I mentioned at the start, I'd love to hear what you guys think about repainting your own models, and maybe about this paint job. I've been Sam. See you next time.